you should have XAMPP installed and notepad++ to help you write your files and web pages and scripts that you're going to do. In this video, what I'm going to do is just go through some of the setups that you've got and what you need to do, particularly with the router if you intend to do mobile applications and use your phone to talk to your network. So first of all, let's check out XAMPP, see what's happening. I've got Windows 7. Yours will be a little bit different. I don't know where your icons will be. Just follow along with what I'm doing. So first thing, I'm going to find XAMPP, the control panel. We can get it from the taskbar at the bottom, or we can actually launch it from the program menu with the XAMPP control panel. Doesn't matter which one you use. So if we just launch one of them, we can check that XAMPP is up and running. So there we go. This is XAMPP, the control panel. At the moment, you don't need to know too many things about it. Down the right hand side, if we have a problem, maybe one or two of these buttons are going to help us solve that problem. What is important though is over here with the services that are started up, you should see Apache, you should see MySQL in green. If they're not, if they're orange or red, then try starting them by just pressing the start button on this side. Also important are the ports. Apache should be on port 80 for a web service. The HTTPS secure service should be on 443, and your MySQL port should be on 3306. If these numbers are different, then you're going to have one or two problems later on trying to talk to things. You can change them. Just make sure that if you've got anything running, such as an Xbox or what have you, it's not hogging these ports. It's better if you change your Xbox port rather than these ports. Try to keep these numbers as they are. It's sort of a universal standard, everybody knows where they are. So let's move on to Google Chrome. Let's shut this down. It doesn't matter if you shut down the XAMPP window, everything is still running. So let's start Google Chrome. There we go. First thing you need to do to check everything out, and there we go, we've got an internet, it's working, I've got Google. The first thing I want to do is actually look at my own website, XAMPP running, and to do that I'm going to type localhost in the address bar and press enter. First thing it does is not only give me localhost, it also sends me to another file called or folder called dashboard. Okay, I'll come to that in a minute and we'll have a look what that is. On the top bar we've got several links that we can press. The only ones that we really need to be interested in are the phpinfo and the phpmyadmin. So I'm going to click on this one now. So phpinfo, what this does, and it's important, so if your service starts crashing, things aren't working properly, one of the things I'll be asking you for is this file, or at least a screenshot of this file, which tells me exactly how your service is set up. There are lots of settings. It could be one of these. It's really important to sort of give me the entire file if you want to get things sorted out. So if we've got that working, if you can see that, you have PHP running, you have a web server. If you don't see this, we've got problems, we need to get it sorted out. Going back to the XAMPP dashboard, if we now click phpmyadmin, what we're going to do is see if the database is running, see if that's up and working correctly. Again, something that you will need for your projects, particularly if you're going to be doing a database project, and if you're going to be doing a mobile application also. You might be drawing information from a database, and it's important to get this working. We will come and have a look at a lot of database stuff a bit later on, particularly during the course when you need to learn things about SQL. What I want you to notice also is this number here, 127.0.0.1. That is the IP address of the server. When we type localhost, we could actually have just typed 127.0.0.1, and it should have given us exactly the same page. There we go. So rather than use numbers or an IP address, we tend to use words. Okay, we'll come to that later and show you how to set one or two things up using words rather than numbers. Words are a bit easier to remember than a whole host of numbers. So we have phpmyadmin working, we have phpinfo working. If you have those two things, then really you have a server. We're working. Next thing I want to do is go and find out or show you where your files are stored. So if we go to the file manager, open up the file manager, your file should be stored, unless you told it elsewhere, but if you've selected the default installation, your file should be stored in local disk in the xampp folder. So you might have to scroll down to see it. I've only got a few files. This is a relatively clean installation of Windows. In your xampp folder and in htdocs. htdocs is the root of your website. Okay. And if we take a look at some of the folders that are in here, we can see here we have the dashboard. Okay, that was the actual file. So if I go back here, there you go, localhost, which is saying I want to be on the website, and I am in the dashboard folder. Well, why am I in the dashboard folder when I just typed localhost on here? The reason is this little file here, index.php. That is the home page of your website, htdocs. And all that is doing is redirecting you to this folder. And inside this folder, there is another index.php or index.html. There we go. Actually, it's an index.html file. And that is the one that you're currently seeing on the screen. So this would be a good time to sort of fire up Notepad++ and have a look at this file here. So you should have Notepad++ installed. There's mine, Notepad++, clean installation again. If I choose File, Open, navigate to the same place, local disk, XAMPP, htdocs, there we go, index.php, and open it. There we go. That's what is inside that file, and all it is what we call a redirection, which is there, which takes you to your dashboard folder. Okay, we will learn what all these mean a bit later. If you don't see dashboard, you might see a problem. Okay, if you have that, then contact me or try and figure out what's going on. But that's Notepad++. Very, very important piece of software to use. It's rather like Python. It's using colors to help you understand what's going on. If you just use Notepad, everything's just going to be black text and not spaced out like this. So please use Notepad++. Right, okay, so now we've got the site working, we've got XAMPP working, we've got our database working, we've seen where the folders are. What I want to do is have a look at the router. Now, all routers are going to be different. Your router is going to be different to mine. I've got a Skybox router at the moment, which is giving me my service, but I've got one or two other routers that I can probably plug in and let you have a look at later. If you've got a Virgin ISP, then what you're going to see is going to be a bit different to what I'm going to show you. However, the information is the same. So, first of all, let's go and contact our router. We need to have a look at our router. You don't need to at the moment. If you are thinking about doing a mobile application, this could well be important to you. So let's close these down. The router, now it's got an IP address, and normally it is 192.168.0.1. This is not always the case. I've got routers that have different ending addresses, might be 1.0 or 0.2, but this is pretty standard. It's something that you know, if you type in, you're going to get there. Look on your router, it will tell you, there'll be a little sticker on there telling you what number you've got to type in. So there we go. If I press enter now, I'm going to be talking to my router. So there we go, I've got the Skyhub home, and here's my router. Your menus are going to be different. How it looks is going to be completely different. It's just a web interface helping you to set your router up. I'm going to go into the advanced. The first thing I'm going to look at is something called a dynamic DNS. When we said 127.0.0.1 was much better if we used a name like localhost, we can do the same with our own network. We can have our computer known to the world by words, a name, rather than a set of numbers. I'm going to show you sort of on your router where that is set up. Some routers might not have this facility. Most of them do. If you've got a Skyhub, it will. Lots of Netgear routers have this facility. So I'm going to go into advanced. You need to type in your username and password. If you haven't reset your password on your router, which I suggest you do, have a look on your sticker again. It will give you your username, which is usually admin, and then the password. It's either left blank or it's given you a series of numbers and letters that you need to type in. You can change that for something that you want, which I have done on mine. So I've got a familiar password. When I log in, there we go. I get loads of options to play around with. Really what I am interested here is in this one, dynamic DNS. This is a service you can either purchase or get free from a company, a DNS service, a domain name service. I've got one with a company called DynDNS. So if I just type in here, DynDNS in another browser, I can go to host services, my DNS account. And this is a company that provide a link to my own website. So I'm going to sign in. There we go. Details are already there. Click login, and I am now in, or hopefully, into my site. There we go. I'll come back to that in a minute. So going back to the dynamic DNS, I can tell my router where that site is. And if you've got the Skybox, it will be exactly this. And this is the address here, www.dyndns.org. That is the company you're using. There are a few others. Some can be free, some you're going to have to pay for. But this is to give your home computer, your router, an address that is known to the world. Okay, so going to find out what your address is to the world, if you type in what's my IP in Google, it will tell you what your address is known to the world. 188.220.144.210, that's mine. These numbers are getting a little bit confusing now, but that's my public IP address. That's the one that Sky have given me. That's my house. Inside my house, I've got a little network, which always starts with 192.168, and that's my network for my house. And inside that, I've got a network or my web services, my personal computer, which starts with 127.0.0.1. So we've got lots of IP addresses, and you need to know which one is which. So what's my IP is telling me what what the address of my Skybox is, how the world see me. Now, anybody who types in that into a Google browser or an Internet Explorer browser, they will come to your home. Okay, they'll be knocking on your door. We don't need to let them in, don't worry. But that's your address. So if I go back to my host services, if I click on my services here, let's see what we've got. There we go. Let's just wait for it to load up. There we go. Here's my host services. And that number that you've just seen there, 188.220.144.210, means that I can use this learn.homedns.org, and it will use those words, which will send me to my home address. So as you notice, I've probably had one or two different ones in the past. We can actually type that in. So I can either type that, or I can type that into a browser and you'll see the results. So let's first of all type the words. learn.homedns.org will take me to my home, my website. There you go. It worked. Or I can actually type in the IP address. Now I'm not very good at this. 188.220. Let's do that. 188.220.144. What was the last little bit? 210.210 will take me to exactly the same place. There you go. So that's the IP address externally of my home website. Okay, we don't need to bother with those anymore. I'm going to shut them down. So you need to know what your IP address is of your home. If you've got a service, then you would set them up, you would link them together. I'm just going to click on this one and show you what we saw before. This is where you type it in, 188.220, blah, blah, blah. And we've got another one down here, an IPv6 address. This could cause us a little bit of trouble, particularly if you're using XP as I am on as your server. We might get one or two crashes later on, so it's safe to just highlight that, remove it, and then click save changes. I will come back to this shortly. But now I've set this up. The whole point of setting this up is that that address is going to change. In about a month's time, they will give me a new address. The problem is that on my router, it won't know that. And so when they change the address and you type in learn.homedns.org, it will just give you a blank page. We need to keep them in sync, and the whole purpose of keeping them in sync or having this site is to set up your router and say, that's my site. Okay, so look for that. And when Sky change my IP address, contact www.dindns.org, find that site with the username and password which you set up, and I've actually got a key generated there, so I don't need a password, and it will automatically update this site and that number will change. And to the outside world, it won't really matter. Every time I type learn.homedns.org, it will come find out whatever that number is, and that will take me to my home router. So that is basically the startup. Again, your LAN network is going to be wildly different to mine. You're going to see different numbers, different menus, but that's the basics that we need to know. Dynamic DNS means that you can have a link to the outside world. What I'm going to look at now is the actual computer. So I'm going to click on maintenance. I have to type in my password again because I have been talking too long and it's logged out. And hopefully it'll get me in. There we go. So I've nipped over to maintenance. If you've got Sky, it will be exactly the same. I can click on this, attach devices, see what devices and what IP addresses they have in the house. So I've got quite a few devices connected up in several different ways. So here we go. These are my attached devices. There are two kinds of addresses, as I've mentioned already, IP addresses. A V4, which has 4 bits, 192.168.0.7, which is old. It's being replaced with new ones called an IPv6. Most things, and I've just noticed that my phones aren't on there, most of them have rather a larger address because actually these numbers are running out worldwide, so they need bigger numbers to have more items worldwide. This is new. If you're going to get any problems, then generally it's going to be around about this address. Okay, and going back to DynDNS, if you just remove that and save it, it will probably get your router and everything else up and running. Because what will happen is that this router, the Sky router, will pass back to DynDNS, the latest version of this. So, back here. My web server is on Gollum. I tend to name things after characters from Lord of the Rings. and that has an IP address of 192.168.0.16. And just as Sky will change the address of my router, and I'll have to go to DynDNS to change it here, the same thing's going to happen with this. At the moment, Golem has that address, but it won't have it for long. It might have it for a month, might have it for a year. And what I really want to do is say, because it's my web server, because that is the computer I want as my web server, I always want to keep it as that. To do that, I have to make it static. At the moment, it's dynamic. In other words, it's going to change. I have to make it static, so it is never, ever going to change. So, way to do that, if we go back to advanced on this particular router, apologies for the slow nature. If I click on a LAN IP setup here, LAN for local area network, in other words, my house, that's the internet. Here we go, LAN IP setup, where we saw dynamic DNS before. If I scroll down, I've got something called an address reservation here. On some routers it's called port forwarding, okay? On this one it's called address reservation, meaning this one's always going to have that address. And I have set up, I've added my device, Golem 192.168.0.16, and that's the number of the computer inside the house. It's always going to have that number. So I always know that that is going to be my web server. Okay, so you can do that. You can add yours, whatever your device is. The MAC address is something a little bit different. We'll cover that in the course and a bit later on. But the IP address is what we're really interested in. That needs to stay always at that for my web service. If it keeps changing, then you're not going to get your web up and working. So we've looked at all the attached devices, we've chosen the device, we've said to it that is the one that I want to use always as my web service. The only thing I've got to do is actually talk to it, and the problem is that, right, did I say port forwarding on that? I meant a static address reservation. I'm coming on to port forwarding now. I do apologise. If we go to security, to be able to talk to something, we have to, agree to let it through. So anything from the outside world that needs to contact my computer needs to come through the firewall. This is where sometimes it's called port forwarding. On the Skybox, it's called firewall rules. So if I click on the firewall rules, what you'll see is the port forwarding, and here we go. The inbound services, so anything coming to my router from outside. So even if I've set up my host service and we can get to my router with an address and it knows where my web server is, it still won't talk to it unless you do this, unless you say, well, okay, if you receive anything on port 80, remember that number that we saw in XAMPP, anything that you see on port 80, you need to allow that through the firewall because that is a website, any HTTP request, and it needs to go to this computer. Okay, so you have to set those up. It's quite straightforward. You just pick them depending on the router you've got. There are different ways of doing it. I've also got another service through, File Transfer Protocol. That's on port 20 or 21 on the same computer. Always allow them through. Another thing that we had on XAMPP was, if I just double click it and start it up, we had another port 443. That's the HTTPS. I haven't set that up on this one because I've got no certificates that I'm going to give out and let people know my website is safe, so I haven't got that service gone. If I wanted to do that, I would just click add and then go through HTTPS. So what service would I want to do? There we go, HTTPS port 443, and then choose a particular machine that it's going to go to. So if remember, the one that we did was 192.168. phpinfo.8.0.16. So I've now said which computer can be my secure server. All I need to do is click apply. You can also restrict people and whether you're going to have a log. So that is how to set things up. Last thing I want to do is take a look at the network, your own computer network. Again, icons will be different wherever you go. This is Windows 7, so if I click on the network and click Open Network and Sharing Center, I'm going to sort of minimize and move this window out of the way, otherwise I'm going to get a problem. Here we see how your network is sort of set up. My computer attached to the network, which goes to the internet. What I'm looking for is this local area connection. If I click on that, it's going to give me some information about my computer, how it's connected. Something else that if you've got a problem, I will want to see these details. So if you click on details, it's going to give you some information. And as we can see, we have got a couple of things here. We've got when the IP address was given and when it's going to be expiring and getting a new IP address, which may be different. Notice that my IP addresses here are actually different. I've got a little network, I've got a sub-network within a network in VirtualBox. So actually this isn't the computer you were looking at for my website. That was 192.168.0.16. But here we see the DNS server, a gateway to the internet, 192.168.0.1. We know what that one is. That is your router. And we've got IPv4 and we've also got IPv6. And if we take a look, IPv6s are a little bit of a mishmash of addresses. The important part really is the end one, which is just telling you what number it is. If we go back to DNS and we take a look here, let's just get that back on the screen. As I said, I needed to move things around. Let's move things around. There we go. The address here, that's number 10. This one is going to number 1. Okay, whatever number 1 is, it could be a card, it could be a computer, it could be a printer, who knows. I think this is my router. They are rather confusing, but if you've got a problem with IPv6, like I said, if you delete that, it's going to use the IPv4, the old version. It's going to know where your computer is at all times. I think I've spoken a bit long for setting up. If you've understood that, if you don't understand it, feel free to email me or anything else like that, and I will take you through setting your own system up if I can. You're going to hit 1 or 2 problems from time to time, but there's nothing we can't sort out.